Good evening, everyone. My name is Chris Burton. I have the honor and joy of serving as co-chair for the Davidson Black Alumni Network, and we are so excited on behalf of the entire DBAN network. So excited for you all to be joining us tonight for our third installment, if you can believe it. If you've been hanging out with us monthly now, our third installment of this DBAN Masterclass series, and tonight's lecturer is our very own Janet Stovall. Janet is a class of 85 grad. Janet Stovall, CDE, is the founder of Pragmatic Diversity, a global consultant, a TED speaker with over 3 million views, and co-author of one of my favorite book titles I've ever come across. It's an Amazon bestseller called The Conscious Communicator, The Fine Art of Not Saying Stupid Shh. And she serves on the Davidson College Board of Trustees. And tonight, she's going to be sharing with us from powerless to powerful, building your personal manifesto. This talk will show us how our understanding our own personal perspective on equity and how we see fairness, opportunity, and justice can guide us to concrete action. So without further ado, I want to ask you to join me in welcoming Janet Stovall.
Thanks so much, Chris. And good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining you. As Chris said, I'm Janet Stovall, and I'm thrilled to spend this Black History Month masterclass with you. So let's get going. I don't know about you, but Black History Month this year, it hits a little bit differently. I'm tired. I'm a little scared. I'm hella mad. And for a while now, I've been feeling pretty powerless to do something about anything. Personally, I've just felt stuck. What about you? Well, tonight I want to share something that I've been working on to help myself get unstuck. And I'm still mad, but as Dr. Charles King said to me way back when I was a junior at Davidson, I'm working on turning mad into meaningful. Now, Angela Davis gave us the choice, the clear choice. We may not feel like we can individually change things, but that doesn't mean that we have to accept them. So the question is, what does non acceptance look like? We're in a tough moment, and the feeling of powerlessness is really real. We see progress rolling back. We see a whole lot of noise from people saying nothing and a whole lot of silence from people who should be saying something. But what actually can we do? What can I do? Well, it isn't just you that feels this way, and it isn't anything new. We've been here before. Black history isn't something that just happened in the past. It's being made right now. Every major advancement came from people using the power they had right where they were. They didn't wait for the perfect conditions because there never have been. They didn't try to do everything at once because they had other stuff to do, like try to stay alive. Rather, they focused on concrete, strategic, and sustained action. And this tradition, this way of getting things done, is something that we can still do. Maybe not the same way, but some way. See, we know from history that Black people have power. We've seen it work in South Africa, in Haiti, in Notting Hill, in 1960s USA. Students, housekeepers, transit workers, business leaders, clergy, hell, enslaved people used whatever they had, wherever they had it, to turn things upside down. So why isn't this happening now? Well, there are a lot of reasons. But I think one of the biggest ones is because most people here build a movement and think, well, that's not me. I'm not an organizer. I don't have time to march in the streets. I have a job, a family, and responsibilities. And these days they're shooting white people for acting up. So the history and research, however, show us that movements don't just need marchers. They need people in every sector using whatever power they have. Because one thing we do know is this: nothing changes unless we change it. That too is nothing new. Frederick Douglass said it way back in 1857. And this is the same fight that he was talking about then, the fight against equity. The attacks on institutions, the rollback of rights, the culture wars, at their core, they're all about maintaining systems that advantage some by disadvantaging others, namely us. And Douglas tells us exactly how those systems work. They will take as much as we allow them to take. The limits of injustice are set by our willingness to resist. But notice what he says. Resistance happens with blows, but it can also happen with words. Now, we're not all going to come to blows, but we can all do words. And words are powerful. Words declare what you believe. Words commit you to action. Words hold you accountable. Words build movements. But not just words shouted out into the void or whispered only in prayer. I mean, we all know the African proverb, when you pray, move your feet. And that starts with a manifesto. So, what is a manifesto? The word manifesto actually comes from Latin, and it connotes something that is very clear and conspicuous. More specifically, manifestos are public, usually written, declarations that outline the policies, goals, motives, or beliefs of an individual, a group, a political party, or a government. There are artistic manifestos, philosophical manifestos, corporate manifestos, personal manifestos, and political manifestos. Manifestos spur social or artistic change. They function as formal, persuasive, public statements of intent. And you think they don't have power? Think they don't? Two words, Project 2025. They told us what they were going to do. And see just how well they're doing it. The famous French artist Paul Gauguin painted an artistic manifesto. Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? It was a manifesto because he intended it to be as a final, comprehensive, philosophical testament to his life's work, passion, and spiritual beliefs. He posed three profound questions, and it was a good foundation. So we're going to borrow it, but let's add in some objective ways to actually get at the answers. Tonight, I'd like to introduce you to three different questions and three models that can help us answer them. They are practical tools that can help us move our personal manifestos beyond the abstract. They can help us turn powerlessness into power and paralysis into a plan. Because remember this, communal revolution starts with individual action. So let's look at the first question. And I want you to take out your phones or be prepared to click on the link, okay? So, now some of you may have heard that I'm working on my second book. Now, Anthony Fox was kind enough to write the foreword for my first one, even though he was a little uncomfortable with that title that Chris likes so much. Well, nobody's going to write the foreword for this one. But the book centers on the three models I've been working on for several years. The first is the doing model. In my many years of doing this work, officially and unofficially, I've observed that there are five perspectives on equity, archetypes, if you will. Doing is an acronym that represents those five. But before I explain it, I'd like to give you a chance to see which one you might be. So use your phone to capture this QR code and take the quiz. It's short. Or my dear daughter Maya has just dropped into the chat the link that you can click on instead. So I'm going to give you a few minutes to take the quiz. And when you're done, drop in the chat which one you think you are. Go. Okay. Let's see, we got opportunist, we got disaggregationist, another disaggregationist. I'm not going to read all these, but I just love the fact that there are different personalities coming in. Okay, well, keep dropping them in there, but I'm going to keep going because I want to make sure that we have time at the end of this for you to ask any questions that you have. Okay, so here's what you see on the screen now is the model. In case you didn't see it before and didn't understand which one you thought you were. Why is this model important to building a personal manifesto? Well, understanding your equity perspective is crucial to effective action, and there is no single right answer here. Your archetype is not a box. What it is a starting point that reveals where your power actually comes from. It's all about how you think we get to equity, because that determines how you will approach the work of advancing equity. Your archetype isn't just a label, it's your strategy. How you act depends on who you are. A disaggregationist, for example, focuses on specific actions for a particular community, while an interventionist targets systems to dismantle or rebuild. This alignment ensures your manifesto is authentic and effective. Understanding who you are is the first step in doing the most that you can do. But just as important as knowing who you are is knowing where you are, because you cannot use the same strategy everywhere. You need to know the space you're moving in. That's what the work model helps you do. Wholehearted organizations and spaces are rare. Right now, we're living in a kindred space, and your strategy has to adapt to the reality. So you don't want to waste your time and energy trying to do the right work in the wrong space. Now, my book focuses on the workplace because that's where I do work. But the work model isn't just about corporate organizations. It's about any environment where you're trying to create any kind of change, your workplace, your community, your school, your church, your neighborhood association, even your family. The four types still apply. Wholehearted organizations and spaces are justice driven. They actively fight for justice and equality. They champion diversity and inclusion. They promote equality for all and advocate for marginalized groups. Think, for example, of a community organization that campaigns for affordable housing, runs programs to support marginalized families, or publicly advocates for policy changes. They are all in. Outspoken organizations or spaces are diversity focused. They're vocal about their efforts, they publicly promote inclusivity, they share their inclusion goals, and they challenge social injustice. Think about a neighborhood association that publicly shares its diversity goals, hosts community forums on equity, and speaks out against discriminatory practices. They're not afraid to say it out loud. Now, resolute organizations and spaces are value driven. They are clear about their values, they're firm in their beliefs, and committed to their mission, even when it's controversial. Think of a faith community that takes a clear stance on social justice, aligned with their values, even when it's unpopular, sometimes even if it doesn't sound like what you think it should. They're going to hold the line. And then finally, there are the kindred organizations and spaces. They're image focused. They target narrow audiences, they prioritize their brand over inclusion, they have homogeneous internal cultures, and they market only to insiders. Think of a private club that caters to a specific demographic, maintains its exclusive image, and has very little diversity. For them, equity is not part of their mission. Understanding where you are tells you what's possible. You cannot use the same tactics in a kindred space that you'd use in a wholehearted space. The environment shapes your strategy. Okay, so then once you know who you are and where you are, you need to figure out what's actually blocking progress. Enter the Empower model. It gives you 7 questions to diagnose the obstacles. It also is an acronym. Examine. That question is, what does inclusion mean here? Do people have a shared understanding of what you're trying to achieve? If not, that's your starting point. Map. What's getting in the way? What's the actual barrier? Is it a policy, a person, a practice, a belief system? You got to name it. Participate is about asking, are we talking about these things? Is there space for honest conversation about equity, or is it taboo? If people aren't talking, you need to create that space first. Own. Are we accountable? Does anyone have responsibility for equity outcomes, or is it just nice words with no consequences? If there's no accountability, nothing changes. Welcome. Are we open to new ideas and perspectives, or do people shut down anything that challenges the status quo? If they're not open, you'll need to build trust before you can push change. Engage. Do we have tangible ways for people to share their perspectives? Are there actual mechanisms, surveys, forums, feedback loops, or is it all performative? If there's no real way to engage, you're going to have to build one. And finally, reimagine. What's the next step? Can people envision a different future? Or are they stuck in, this is how we've always done it? If they can't imagine it, you're going to have to paint the picture. Now, these questions help you pinpoint exactly what's blocking equity. Once you know that, you know what action to take. So now you have the tools, you know who you are, you can figure out where you are, and you know what's blocking progress. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Well, that's where the manifesto comes in. The manifesto is a declaration of what you believe and what you will do. It's how you turn all that analysis into action. And here's a template for you. I'll go over it very briefly. The preamble is why I'm writing this. This is your why now statement. What's happening in this moment that demands action, what pushed you to put a pen to paper. It anchors your manifesto in the current reality. Then there are your core beliefs, what you believe about equity and justice. These are your non negotiables about equity. What do you believe about fairness, about how change happens, about who deserves opportunity? This is your doing archetype. It reflects your natural perspective on justice. Principles and commitments. What guides your actions? Now, these are your guardrails. How are you going to show up in this fight? What standards are you going to hold yourself to? What won't you compromise on, even when it gets hard? And it will. Then are the actions I will take. These are the concrete steps. This is where the models come together to help you figure out what you will actually do from where you are to drive equity. First, though, you have to identify your leverage point. What do you control? Where do you have influence? It might be a classroom, your volunteer role, your neighborhood association, your church committee, your social media platform, your family gatherings, your professional network. Name the specific place where you have power. Second, name your specific action. What will you do with that leverage? Be concrete. Don't say stuff like promote equity, but try start a conversation about equity in your book club, or challenge racist comments at family dinners, or mentor a young person from an underrepresented community, or vote with your dollars by supporting Black-owned businesses. Third, you have to address what's blocking the progress. What's in the way, and how are you going to deal with it? If people don't know how, you're going to have to teach them. If they're resistant, you're going to have to build support first. If there's no urgency, you're going to have to make the case for why this matters now. The point is, you're not waiting for someone else to lead the revolution. You're using whatever power you have wherever you are to move equity forward. Then there are the outcomes you seek, what success looks like. How are you going to know it worked? What's going to be different? You have to make it measurable and specific, not a more equitable future or more equitable culture, but free people from underrepresented groups in leadership roles, or a 20% increase in budget allocated to equity initiatives. I know that's corporate, but you have to define what victory looks like. So let me show you mine. But before I do, let me tell you a little bit about who I am and how I work based on the models. Who I am. My doing archetype, unsurprisingly, is disaggregationist. I believe in disaggregating the data to figure out who's being most harmed and what needs to be worked on most. I focus on helping the groups that need it. That's where I put my energy. Now, where I work. The work model tells me what kinds of companies I can actually help. I prioritize the wholehearted and the outspoken companies because they're already doing the work and they just want to go deeper. I will partner with resolute companies, but only if we can build a clear roadmap together to move them forward. And I just walk away from kindred companies. If equity isn't part of your mission, is not part of who you are or the work you do, well, then we're just not a fit. Now, how I decide what I'm going to do is that's the Empower model. It's how I figure out whether I can help at all. Those 7 questions. What does inclusion mean here? What's in the way? Are we talking about it? Are we accountable? Are we open? Can people share perspectives? What's next? Those questions tell me what's blocking progress and whether I have the tools to address it. If the answers tell me the company isn't ready or isn't serious, I just walk away. That's how I use the models to decide where to put my energy. So that said, this is my manifesto, and I'll let you read it. Kind of small, but I'll give you a few minutes to read it. If you have any questions right now, drop them in the chat, and we'll talk about them at the end. So I'll give you a few minutes. Okay, I'm pretty sure we hand these slides out afterwards, so when you have nothing else better to do, feel free to give it to read it later. But so now that you've seen my manifesto, it's time for you to actually build your own, because this is how you're going to move from feeling powerless to having some real impact. You start by understanding your equity perspective, because that is your superpower. Then you have to assess your environment honestly, not how you wish it were. I'm going to challenge you to write your manifesto this week, to commit to one action this month, and to find your coalition. Because this isn't about doing everything. It's about doing something concrete and strategic. That's enough to start, and that's enough to make a difference. Because if we don't do something, nobody will do it for us. In fact, if we don't do something, we won't have a history, hell, we won't have a future. Science fiction writers in general don't create Black characters because they don't imagine a future with Black people in it because they can't see us there. They can't imagine us surviving, thriving, building, creating, but we are here and we are in the future. And the question is, what future are we building right now? So when you write your manifesto, you're not just planning your next quarter, you're imagining a future where equity exists, where the most harmed are protected, where systems work for everyone. You're doing what those science fiction writers couldn't and can't do. You're imagining us in the future and then you're building it. That's the work. That's what your manifesto is for. So when you hang up from here today, I want you to remember this. You are the future that someone couldn't imagine. June Jordan said it best. You exist in defiance of the people who thought we wouldn't make it this far. So now it's your turn. What future will you build? What will you do with the power you have? So I thank you for joining me here today and for engaging in this critical work. And so now I'm going to open it up for questions and discussion. And I'm not sure how we do this, whether you come off camera or you drop it in the chat. So I will let Chris or Adam tell me how to do that.
Yeah, folks can drop. Oh, sorry, Chris, if you want to say it.
Good. I'll just share that what Adam was going to say is that folks can feel free to drop what they want to say in the chat, and also I'm not sure if people can come off camera and off of mute, but I think at least at the very least dropping it in the chat and I can read it out loud so Janet can engage with it that way.
Yeah, if anybody does want to come on camera or anything, just put that in the chat or Q&A, and I can elevate you to a panelist, and you can be seen and heard by everyone, and we can go that way too. So feel free to just put a note in the Q&A or chat, and I can pop you up in here.
Now, see, if I'd done this right, I would have dropped a survey or something in there so we could have then aggregated what everybody is. But you know what? I didn't. That was too much work. I couldn't figure that out.
Next time, next time.
Next time, next time. But I'd love to hear what people think, whether they think it's something they can do, whether they think it has any power. Did it help?
Yeah, I'll open up that. I thought this was really, really excellent because in a time like now where folks don't even know where to start, there's such an emotional response to all that's going on. Really having this sort of framework helps us with our personal strategy because we can't all do all the things. All of us have a particular role to play. So I think a framework like this really helps us get into the specifics of what we need to do in this time. So thank you for that.
Sure. I mean, I don't know about you, but like I spend a lot of time sitting around going, this is just getting worse by the day.
Yeah.
And there's nothing I can do.
Right.
And, my oldest daughter is trying to just leave the country. That's her thing. She's going to expatriate. Well, yeah, I'm too old for that. So,
Yeah.
so I got to figure out what to do in this space.
Right.
And I think it makes it easier if we feel like we can do something. And like I said, when I first started thinking about this, I didn't take this seriously either. I was like, a manifesto, come on. And
Hmm.
honestly, it was Project 2025 that made me really think about this.
For
Because I'm
sure.
like, they just wrote it down.
Yeah. They took their time. They wrote it down.
Okay, so Joe dropped a question, I think.
Yeah, we got
Uh,
a question from Joe and a question from Ethan as well.
okay, I'll start with Joe's. Can you provide a current example of your work with an entity? You don't have to name it, and either the progress or outcome. I can tell you what the progress is. We're waiting to see what the outcome is going to be. I am working right now with one of the largest medical device manufacturers in the world. And what they wanted to do was actually make inclusion practical. And I focus on inclusion because I figure diversity within an organization, you don't have a lot to do with that. Diversity is destiny, but within an organization, most people don't have any control over that. Equity is absolutely what we want to get to, but we won't get there if we don't start with inclusion. Inclusion is actionable, everybody can do it. So I focus my work on that. This particular company has been throwing the word inclusion around for a long time. And I knew them, I worked with them when I was with the company that I quit. earlier last year. And so I knew them, and we'd had conversations all along about, inclusion. What does that mean? Because I'm a big proponent of you have to define it, and it's different in every organization. I often talk about I used to call it my Chick-fil-A to Ben and Jerry's continuum. I'm gonna leave Chick-fil-A alone now, and I'm gonna put them in the Resolute category, not the Kindred category. But if you think about a Kindred organization like Abercrombie and Fitch, okay, or Brandy Melville, they did a whole nasty Netflix thing about them, so I can talk about them calmly. Think about what inclusion would mean at an Abercrombie and Fitch versus what it would mean at a place like Ben and Jerry's. Well, at least the old Ben and Jerry's. Inclusion has to be defined. So all that to say, this organization came to me and said, "Can you help us?" And that was my first thing. We talk about the empowered model. My first question was, "What are you solving for?" And they said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Why are you doing inclusion in the first place? It's not because you're nice. It's not because you like people. You're doing it for a reason." They said, "Well, we focus on innovation." Okay. So then I start going through a lot of questions. But at the end of the day, the way you define inclusion and then how you get to inclusion to get to the equity that you're going to need to make people want to stay there was big. And what I said to them was, I have this little mantra that I use, and it says that diversity is not a problem to solve, diversity solves problems. Inclusion is not feeling valued, inclusion is being able to deliver value. And equity is not fair people, equity is fair systems. So when I go into an organization and with them, I said, all right, so let's focus on this inclusion part. It's not about feeling value, so being able to deliver value. So what I'm doing for them is I've already built an actual model for them. I'm very big at building models of inclusion. And there are three principles. And because they are a science-based company, they needed scientific support for this. So did Google gobs of research for them. And they have now these three very basic tenets, pillars of inclusion for their company. And now we're taking that and we're translating it by audience, senior VPs, individual contributors. They have these HR business partners. We're developing actual learning, training pathways for them, essentially, to go along this journey. And the journey that we're building is from awareness to ownership. And there's like stops along there. And we're building the whole learning program that they'll need for that, the whole experiential program that they're going to need to get them there, understanding that just like the work model, where it is, where it talks about knowing where you are, it also depends on who you are in that space. So different people do different things. I actually presented these models to them last year. I spoke at their summit, and we did it in a workshop, and they were able to do the thing and figure out who they were. And then I was going to have them do another survey to figure out what the company was, and their system didn't work. So I said, all right, let's just open it up. I said, but I don't want to put anybody on the spot. They said, no, put us on the spot. And so they, as a team, decided what their company was. And then we went through all the things to do it. So we kind of had laid the groundwork for it earlier last year. And now I've actually built that model for them. And it really is about trying to figure out what the problems are there for them in this moment for the groups that are trying to do it and try to get them to the point of getting inclusion right so then we can move on to equity. I mean, to be fairly honest, equity is a very difficult concept, not only in society, but certainly within organizations, because it's expensive, because you're going to make a lot of people mad. But at the end of the day, if you don't know what your perspective is on it, you don't know how to do the work. As a disaggregationist, I come into it differently than an interventionist or an opportunist would. That was a very long answer to your question, I'm sure.
Janet, I want to share with you Ethan's question in the Q&A. He says, or they say, Janet, thank you for your time. Just curious, why did you choose manifesto versus personal statement?
Because manifesto is a stronger word. And and a personal statement doesn't necessarily have all those pieces in it. You can make a personal statement about who you are, where you are, what you want to do. A manifesto makes it very clear to what you want to do. And manifestos are designed to be said publicly, not necessarily a personal statement. That can stay personal. A manifesto, you'll put it on a t-shirt. You'll be like Project 2025. You'll say, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. And part of that is what makes you accountable. Because when you put it out there in the world, you're accountable for it. A personal statement, you can live by it. And if you are disciplined and self-aware, you might actually advance it. I'm not that disciplined. And I am self aware enough to know that unless somebody calls me on it all the time, I might not do it. I might get depressed one day. I might get tired of all this. I might just say, I don't have the energy today. But if it's out there in the world and you know, and I'm committed to it, somebody's going to call me on it at some point. And I welcome people to call me on it. Now that you've seen mine, call me on it. If you see me not doing it, you know, call me on it. So that's the difference with a manifesto. A manifesto forces you to really not just say what it is you believe and what you want to do, but to say how you're going to do it, to say what you will stand for, what you will not stand for, and to say it to the world.
I hear that. Janine Bryant shares, thank you. I have your first book and use it to revise my newsletters. My
Good.
question, my question, I have a board retreat tomorrow, and I wonder if I could use that QR code to ask the members how they fall on the doing spectrum and maybe enlightening for our next steps.
Absolutely. And you know, the book is in progress and it probably will not be done until the end of this year because whereas the first one that I wrote was a little bit easier because even the model that was built in there was built specifically from my work as a communicator. The three models in this one, specifically the doing model, which is why I'm glad you asked me that because one of the things that has to happen is that model has to be validated. And it's being validated against a couple of other different things. But the more people who answer that survey, the easier it is for me to validate it. So I would love for you to share it. And then once you do, you know, if anybody asks, you can tell them that the goal is to get the book written by the end of this year. And you know, and I want to give props to Davidson student who actually helped me do some of the work for this. I've asked Davidson students to help me with this. And
Awesome.
Beth was great with helping me doing the research for the work model. And so, you know, where I can bring in students to help with this, I will. And getting this model validated may be one where I reach out to them for help.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. I see Michelle Serrano says she has a great memory of you that she wants to share. She's gonna
Uh-oh.
come off of mute and do that.
Uh-oh.
First of all, thank you. This is, of course, timely. I always appreciate you, Janet, and for the Davidson Black Alumni Network for putting this together along with Davidson College. So kudos, and you're gonna get that book written. I already see it. I already got. I look. Let's go ahead and put the link out. I'm going to order mine right now. So one of the things that this is a memory that I have shared as a student and as an alumna repeatedly because it helps me to get a point across, especially to alumni. And that is that I have memories of I'm class of 90 and Janet and others in the classes of in the 80s and the classes of the 70s would come to visit us at the BSC. I remember gatherings where we would be there dancing together, laughing together, eating together. But they would come and visit, you know, at different points for different events on campus. And so I remember one day, I think we were in the old student union or whatever, and we were in the bathroom of all places. I went to the bathroom. Janet walks in, and we were talking, and we had also been in conversations about just some frustrations that I had as a student, feeling like there were some people there who didn't think I belonged. You know, there were some people who maybe felt like I wasn't capable, those kinds of things. And so I remember kind of venting to Janet. And what really got me is that she looked me directly in my eyes. She stopped, she listened, she looked me directly in my eyes, and she said, "What can I do? Or what can we do?" And I share that story because as she was talking about her manifesto, and it just makes sense to me, um, and this model is because oftentimes it's the person listening, trying to learn and understand, but also then asking that question. And so now as an alumna, I ain't gonna say how many years out, but me as an alumna, I try to do the same thing. And so what she did is she modeled for me, and I try to model that for others and other alumni who I encourage them. You don't have to do everything. You don't have to do it all. You don't have to go to every event. But what can you find that you can do? Where can you fit in? Like for me, I don't really fit in on, I don't think on the institutional side, but I fit in on that making connections and connecting others on a one-to-one basis or within organizations. So I stay closely connected to student organizations. So I
Mhm.
just want to give Jen a shout out. I've always appreciated that. I've shared that story and just told about the impact it had on me to help me understand, okay, once you become an alum, this is what you can do too. Like you can ask the question, what can we do? What can I do? What do you need? And then that helps me to give back to pay forward. But also, and I was I didn't send it to everybody. I chose the wrong thing. I ended up as an integrationist, even though I'm a Gemini, so I probably would have wanted to go back and do it again. But I just wanted to share that story. So Janet has always been true to it, and I really appreciate you, Janet, not only for this conversation, but all the years of conversations that you've been present and active. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
There it is. There it is. And
Now, I
then,
know my daughter was back there in the background saying that she managed to go to the survey because, she's in all my stuff. And she was able, I think, to aggregate something. So,
ooh.
Maya, I don't know if you want to come off mute. She said she's not getting on camera tonight, but, um, or you want to come off mute and tell us wherever it was you dug up?
I'm happy to. Um, so just some general totals of this group of 18 folks who filled out the survey. We have 5 disaggregationists, 8 interventionists, 1 naturalist, 4 opportunists, and 0
Neutralist.
neutralist, I'm sorry. 4 opportunists and 0 globalists, which I find particularly interesting.
Yeah.
Of the 11 women, the majority of them were interventionists, and of the 7 men, the majority were also interventionists.
Mm.
Hmm. Interesting.
I didn't get into
Because,
the
interventionists are the people who say we need to level the playing field. And to be honest, what I have noticed about these 5 archetypes is you have a you have a primary identity, but you're going to tap dance through all of them because it does depend. It does depend on the situation you're in. You're still going to be primarily who you are, but you might lean into one of the others depending on where you are and what position you are, where you are in your career, and that kind of thing. I've always been a disaggregationist. I mean, and I didn't know what the name was, but I always would go in and say, like in my work, I'm often the group I have to deal with is in corporate America that I'm usually trying to make a difference for is Black women. And people will look at me and say, well, that's because you're a Black woman. No, it's because I get the data and I know who's most harmed because I'm a firm believer that you move the big rock first. You think about every major social movement we've had in this country that's been successful was modeled on the civil rights movement. Why? Because the biggest problem we have in this country is race, and it's specifically black versus white. And when we moved the big rocks there, the gay rights movement came after that, the women's rights movement, the ableist movement, every movement since has been built on that because we did that first. So that's why I'm a disaggregationist. But at the same time, I will go in and blow some stuff up. I'm an interventionist too. I mean, Davidson probably sees me more as an interventionist than it does as a disaggregationist. But even then, I first gone through that process of figuring out who's most harmed because that's just the way I think. But it does, you can be a hybrid and you probably will be over time. It's very hard to stay just one or the other if you're really doing this work.
So in that regard, this makes me ask you, Janet, is it something where these become sort of like different masks or modalities that we move through depending on the context, or do you see them as a sort of a continuum, like you may start in one place and you end another place? Like, how do you view it?
It depends. There's some at one point when I was doing this work and doing the research behind it and kind of thinking about it, I thought it was cyclical. I
Hmm.
thought you'd start, end up back in a certain place. And I think some people do. I think some people start in one place and end up someplace different.
Hmm.
Um, I think I've always been this way. I don't know, even when I felt like more of an interventionist, um, I was always like, think about Project 87. Okay, that's way back in college, right? On the surface, that looks like it's intervention because I was like, y'all need to do these things. But at the end of the day, when I wrote Project 87, the reason those numbers are in there I think it was 5 or 10. I don't remember which it was now. It was like 5 different academic areas. I didn't just pick those out of the air. I said, which areas can you most likely put some Black studies classes in where it's going to make a difference? Economics, English,
Mhm.
you could find those things. So it was still a disaggregationist view. I just didn't know that. So I've always been that way. I do believe that some people, as they develop in this work, especially if you don't start out doing this work, if you don't, and depending on where you work, like, if you're not in corporate America, if you're doing community work, if you're doing nonprofit work, I do believe that the situation may make you change in the moment. But I
Mm.
still believe, I mean, I can't actually prove it, but I still believe that you have a basic way that you view the world. Because at the end of the day, whatever you believe about equity, whether it's nature versus nurture, you got that way long before you got into whatever work we're doing here as adults.
Mm-hmm.
You learned that from mama and daddy, from big mama and them. You learned whatever you believed about equity was what you were taught, and that shapes the path that you take. It also depends on, just kind of like if you're an analytical person. Some people aren't. Some people are very creative, very left brain, right brain, depends on what you are. So I do think that who you are shapes it, but I do believe that you will have a basic archetype, and
Yeah.
you will hopefully you will change to do what you need to do in the moment, but you'll start at whatever that place is.
Mhm. Thank you for that.
Sure.
I know Rusty is off of mute and wanted to share some words as well. Go ahead, Rusty.
Hello,
Hey,
can you hear
Rusty.
me?
I hear you.
Hey, Janet.
Hey,
First of
Dan.
all, I hope y'all didn't hear my laugh. Michelle made a comment. There's a sculpture behind you that looks like you're wearing a crown on this.
That's
But anyway, real quick, first of all, I have to apologize. I came to the call a few minutes late, and so I missed, I think, the survey or whatever. But I followed Janet, understand the challenges. I'm a now retired as of September, corporate executive who spent over 35 years in those trenches. And I have to admit, the last couple of years, but especially from that first Trump administration, has been very, very disheartening to see so much of the progress not just halted, but reversed in many cases. But Janet, I love your models. I'm looking forward to getting the materials. I am doing consulting in several organizations. I'm one of those persons that I don't know what your model, what term put on it, but I disrupt. And that has not been personally rewarding in many ways, but it's what I had to do and will continue to do. I just wanted to say continue to do the work, continue to support and encourage Davidson College. Um, you would not believe the alumni of my era who are not happy with the progress the college has made. Um, they consider the college woke. They're not the people you see at the meetings. They're not the people you see at the gatherings. They're not the people that talk. But that being said, each of us has to fight that and overcome that and advocate for that in every way that we can. The last comment I'll make is I was there at the dedication of the memorial this past fall. It lifted me and gave me a boost to my natural optimism. I'm a sales guy, that so many people, especially across the generations of Davidson alums, came out and said this was long overdue. And not only that, they are happy and pleased with the direction the college has taken. The last comment I'll make on that is we have to challenge these entrenched systems. We have to challenge people to change, and more importantly, not to be silent. As a student of history, and that was my minor at Davidson, I have said to people, this playbook is not new. It
right.
is from the 1930s. We have seen it pitting people against one another. playing the zero-sum game, creating others as enemies who are responsible for your own shortcomings and failings. I'm sorry to have gone on a little bit of an editorial, but I just wanted to say, I follow you, and people like you who are not only working on behalf of bettering Davidson and our community, but also the institutions, including our corporations. I just retired from one that had the worst equity and diversity programs led by a Black woman globally. And I challenged her multiple times, and we had arguments about the ineffectiveness and the lack of it. That being said, I'll just say the CEO and founder stood beside 47 that first week in office when he was, outlining his plans. The billionaire class is our challenge, people, because they don't care. They want you as a consumer. I'll let it go. Janet, thank you so much. Again, I apologize for missing. I do want to take the survey. So if you send out the materials, send the survey too, so that I can take it and see where I fall. I've taken so many of those surveys and Myers-Briggs and all the rest of them. I'd love to see where I am on that continuum.
I think we do send out the deck, and do we send out a recording of it?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. See, in the deck, there's a QR code, and you can just click on that, and it'll I'll give it to you.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. And it's interesting what you said about Davidson. It made me think when I've decided which one of those work model organizations Davidson is. I think Davidson would like to think that it's wholehearted, but the very thing that you're saying, the fact that there is this understandable part of our population that thinks we're too woke, I think what Davidson is resolute in the sense that it often takes a stand that is not popular on either side, because Davidson does stuff I don't like, but it takes a stand that's not popular, but it is firm in that. And I think with these Hands Memorial is one of the best examples of that, is that, as a trustee, when we talked about this, we'd be real realistic, because the memorial was one of the recommendations from the Slavery Commission, and we issued that report in August of 2020. So in August of 2020, it seemed like a real good idea and we should do it, and everybody was gung-ho for it. We get to 2025 and we had to say, do we need the FBI here that day? Because somebody's gonna get shot. And we really had to think about that. And there was a contingent that, we knew was not gonna like it. But I give props to Doug and and to people on the committees who said, we're going to do it anyway. And the way I always, I counseled Doug was, I said, look, here's the thing. Davidson has never been neutral. Now, we haven't always gotten it right, but we have never been neutral. We have always said that we are mission driven. Our unofficial motto was to be a disproportionate force for good. So all we got to do is be firm about, stand 10 toes down on what we said, because this is actually in line of everything we say we are. If we don't do it, then we're going against who we say we are. So who we're going to be. And I'll give him credit. He said, we're going to do it. And so I haven't heard anything bad come from it. Nobody got shot, which is a good thing. Nobody got arrested as far as I know. So, and then now the question is going to be, and this is where manifesto comes in, what are we going to do now? What are we going to do now? We've done this and it's powerful, but what are we going to do now? And that's why, I think a manifesto forces you to say, I've done this one thing, let me check it off, but where does it fit in the grand scheme of everything I say I'm going to do? Because you can't just stop. The manifesto, you got to keep going. And so, I think we have a strategic plan at Davidson, but we don't have a manifesto. I might just decide to write one and see what happens.
Janet, we have another question from Joe Park, who says, amidst the current state of things and with the ongoing work that needs to be done, what gives you hope and optimism for the future?
That's a good question. It depends on what day you ask me. Some days the answer is bourbon, but in general, it is, I don't think we have a choice. There is that whole point about future. We really don't have a choice in this. But also, a lot of the people who are really doing the damage right now, they gonna die. They old. They gonna die. And granted, they are raising children. They raising Proud Boys. They're raising them. But I do believe that, like I said, diversity is destiny. And I'm not dumb enough to believe that just because the numbers flip, just because we become, a minority majority nation, that the power structure is going to change. That doesn't change overnight. Numbers matter, but they don't matter that much. But my hope is that we wouldn't have Trump if we hadn't had Barack Obama for 8 years. Barack Obama becoming president scared the living shit out of a whole bunch of people who thought that could never happen. Every brown child who had parents who had the conversation was told, you could be president one day. Didn't nobody really believe that. Our parents didn't really believe that. They told us that, but then it happened. And when other people heard that too, they didn't believe it either. And then it happened. And so if you look at the sheer magnitude of the response to that, which should not have been that way, that tells you how afraid. This is an extinction bubble. These people know that they are going to be gone, and they know they're going to be extinct. So what gives me hope is that that's true. They are going to be extinct. And what we've got to do is not let this beat us down. Because one thing I will say about this, especially if you're black, but even if you're brown in this country, you have been here before. You have survived this before. That's why a lot of what's happening now, black folks aren't out there marching, because they're like, we didn't do this. We told you not to do this. We've been here, but we have to deal with it. And so what gives me hope is that we have dealt with worse and gotten through it. I don't kid myself that this is the same. This is still very different. The stakes are different. The abilities to do damage are different. What they're trying to do is different. But I still believe that we have to survive this. And I believe that we are well suited to survive this. It ain't going to be fun. It ain't going to be easy. But we've been here before. And so it gives me hope that if we do what we've always done, and I'm not giving that crap about resilience, because resilience is that I don't applaud resilience. That's just survival, right? But I do think we have more tools at our disposal too than our grandparents had, than our great grandparents had, and we just have to get serious about using them.
Yeah, wonderfully said. I was gonna ask you for parting words, like any parting words of wisdom, but I mean, I felt like that was just a fantastic thing you just said. So I just want to thank you so much
You're welcome.
for all the gems you dropped on us this evening. I think at the very least, you have several of us waiting to, refresh, pre-order, pre-order, pre-order. So feel that pressure
Y-
and
Y'all be
wonderful
my accountability
encouragement.
partners. Send me a message and go, where the hell's the book, Janet? Where's the book, Janet?
That's right. That's right. We will be your cheering section, cheering you on as you
Thank you.
complete this very necessary and very timely book. So once again, just thank you so much for sharing your wise words here, and for all of you who are watching, thank you all so much for being here. And please, as we mentioned earlier, be on the lookout for the replay and all the materials associated with this, as well as information about our next masterclass. We're so pleased with the response, not only from folks who are volunteering to lead these sessions, but also from you all from showing up consistently. So thank you all for making this happen. And to shout out to Adam Barton and Sarah Taylor as well on the Davidson College side, and Maya Harrell as well on the Davidson College side for helping us make this a reality. So I want to thank you all once again, and please have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. Bye bye, everybody.